Chapter 1. The Call Beneath the Noise. There comes a moment, often quiet, often hidden, when the world loses its grip on you. Not because you escape it, but because something deeper within you awakens. And once it stirs, it does not sleep again. This is the beginning, not of a journey, but of a reckoning. The walls you've lived within, the ceilings you believed were the sky, begin to fracture. Not by force, not by anger, but by clarity. And in that first crack, something holy slips through. It is not light. It is not sound. It is truth. And truth is never what you hoped it would be. You were raised inside a theater of noise, told what to want, who to be, where to go, when to kneel. Every billboard, every screen, every headline has carved a name into your soul that was never yours. You were told to chase a dream, but they never told you whose dream it was. They sold you a crown that never fit, offered you ladders built from smoke, and called it success. But there is a knowing beneath the noise. There is a voice that doesn't shout, doesn't sell, doesn't plead. It waits, and it waits, and it waits for you. Not the you that plays a part, not the one that fits in, but the raw, unmasked, soul-carved self that's been hidden under years of performance. That voice is the call. The final stage of consciousness begins with hearing it. Not with your ears, but with your life. There is a reason most never reach this place. Because to awaken is to lose everything you were never meant to keep. The illusions are comfortable. The lies are polished. And the mask, if worn long enough, begins to feel like skin. But understand this. Everything around you was designed to keep you asleep. Comfort is the currency of captivity. And freedom is not safe. It burns. It sears. It demands. But it is real. Edison, alone in the dark, striking failure after failure, 10,000 times he lit a match to disappointment before he summoned the light. But because the truth he saw was realer than the world around him. He could feel it, pulsing, alive, waiting just beyond what others dared to see. Carnegie stared down poverty, not with bitterness, but with belief. He refused to accept the world as it was handed to him. He didn't escape the steel mills by chance. He rose because something within him refused to shrink. That is the cost of clarity. It demands expansion. And clarity is where the awakening begins. But before that, there is the war. The war is not out there. It is not political, not digital, not cultural. It is internal, between the voice that whispers, "You were made for more," and the one that says, "Be realistic. Sit down. Stay quiet." Who wins? The one you feed. That's not a metaphor. It's not poetic. It is mechanics of consciousness. What you repeat, you believe. What you believe, you become. And most repeat defeat without realizing it. They wake up and tell themselves, "I can't." They walk through days like ghosts, calling it survival. They say things like, "It's just the way it is," as if truth was dictated by majority vote. But truth has never belonged to the masses. Truth has always belonged to the mad. The rebels. The relentless. The ones who don't ask for permission to see. Lincoln walked into a divided nation, not with a crown, but with conviction. They told him unity was impossible. They told him to back down. But clarity gave him sight beyond circumstance. Not just what was, but what could be. That is the power of an awakened mind. It does not bow to what is. It builds what should be. But how do you begin? You begin by turning away from the crowd, not in arrogance, but in reverence. Because if everyone is rushing one way, then truth may be found in standing still. The awakened do not chase popularity. They chase alignment. You do not need 10,000 followers. You need one unbreakable inner compass. Do you feel it? That restless ache? That quiet burn that refuses to die? That's not frustration. That's not depression. That's your potential calling itself out from the cage. And the cage was built from every time you told yourself, "Maybe later." The final stage of consciousness is not about finding answers. It's about becoming the kind of person who can live without needing them. Faith, not as religion, but as the oxygen of transformation. Faith in what? In the fact that you were not born to repeat history, You were born to write it, to bleed it onto the pages of this world with your courage, to shape it as Ford shaped the assembly line, not by following tradition, but by questioning it. But understand this: the moment you begin to awaken, the world will try to put you back to sleep. You will be offered comfort. You will be praised for mediocrity. You will be rewarded for obedience. But none of it will feel like peace. Because peace is not the absence of struggle. Peace is the presence of purpose. And purpose does not arrive in silence. It erupts, like a storm, like a fire that refuses to be contained. Disney was told his ideas were childish. That fantasy was for fools. That business was for men who wore suits, not dreams. But he chose conviction over consensus. And because of that, the world will never again be without the magic he brought to life. That is the measure of a life. Not what you possess, but what you awaken in others. And to awaken others, you must first awaken yourself. So listen, not to me, but to the silence beneath your fear. To the voice that's been waiting behind your doubt. The one that whispers not what you want to hear, but what you were meant to become. You are not your past. You are not your failures. You are not your fears. You are possibility in motion. You are an echo of greatness passed down through the centuries, through every thinker, every builder, every fighter who refused to go quietly. You are not small. You are not broken. You are becoming. And becoming is the most terrifying, beautiful, holy thing you will ever do. This is not motivation. This is memory. A remembrance of what was buried beneath years of forgetting. You are not meant to survive this life. You are meant to ignite it. And if you can feel even a flicker of that flame, then the final stage of consciousness has already begun. Now walk forward. Not with certainty, but with fire. Chapter 2. The Machinery of Belief. It begins with a whisper, but not the kind you hear with your ears. It's a whisper embedded in the marrow of your being, so subtle that most people go their entire lives mistaking it for background noise. And yet, that whisper holds the most powerful force in your existence. Belief. Not belief in religion or politics, or the empty slogans etched across city billboards. But belief in who you are, in what reality is, in what's possible, in what you were made to become when no one else is looking, when no applause is offered, when all the lights go out and you are left with nothing but yourself and the weight of your own mind. From the moment you were born, the world began writing code into the operating system of your consciousness. It was subtle at first, harmless phrases, rules passed down through innocent voices. Sit still, behave, be good, don't question too much, color inside the lines, speak only when spoken to, dream within the boundaries of what others have already done. But slowly, over time, those innocent rules became the chains of limitation. And make no mistake, belief is not just an idea. It is a machine. It is architecture. It is a structure that dictates the movement of your thoughts, your choices, your actions, your willingness to risk, your ability to rise, your capacity to love, your courage to lead. The tragedy is not that people lack power. It is that they are blind to the power they already possess because someone, somewhere, at some point, convinced them that they were never enough. And because the mind is programmable, they internalized that script and began to act it out on a loop, like an actor stuck in the wrong play, auditioning for a role they were born to replace. They do not question the system. They become the system. And the system thrives because those who remain asleep guard it more fiercely than those who designed it. But here is the truth you were never told. Your beliefs are not sacred. They are not untouchable. They are not the law. They are inherited. They were given to you, and anything that was given to you can be changed, reshaped, rewired, rebuilt, reborn. And when that process begins, when you stop assuming that your thoughts are facts and start interrogating them with the precision of a master craftsman, you begin to unlock the mind's highest power, the ability to recreate itself. Consider the story of Henry Ford. Before the world knew his name, he was a machinist's apprentice with dirty hands and a stubborn mind. The world around him was skeptical, bound by horses and tradition, ruled by voices that said, "That's the way it's always been." But Ford's belief wasn't dictated by history. He didn't ask, "What is possible?" He asked, "What should be?" And then, more importantly, what must I become in order to make it so? That single shift, from reacting to inventing, from obeying to leading, redefines the trajectory of a life. Most people never ask that question. They live beneath ceilings that were never real, constrained by limitations that were only inherited thought forms. They talk about success as though it were a lottery, as though destiny were decided by luck, or bloodlines, or chance. But every empire ever built, every revolution ever started, every invention that shattered the silence of limitation, began with a single belief: this does not have to be the way it is. And that belief, that sacred act of defiance against the illusion of permanence, is where greatness is born. Belief is not simply a mindset, it is the engine behind every act of bravery, every decision to keep going when the world says stop, every morning you wake up and refuse to collapse under the weight of what hasn't worked yet. Belief is what turned Thomas Edison's endless failures into the birth of electricity. It's what drove Abraham Lincoln to rise above humiliation, political collapse, personal tragedy, and war to preserve a union most thought was doomed. It's what separated the pioneers from the passengers. But belief does not come naturally. It must be chosen. It must be forged. And the forging is not easy. You will not believe in yourself by reading a quote on a wall or listening to a motivational clip before breakfast. You will believe in yourself the day you choose to stop lying about your limits. The day you sit with your failures and ask what they are teaching instead of hiding them behind excuses. The day you stop outsourcing your confidence to the approval of others and reclaim the responsibility of your own reflection. That is the day your belief becomes bulletproof, not because the world says you're great, but because you have built something inside yourself that does not flinch at resistance. And resistance will come. In fact, it is required. The universe does not hand power to the unproven. It demands growth. It demands pain. It demands that you pass through the furnace of your own inadequacies and emerge with something forged in truth. You will not be applauded. You will be doubted. You will be misunderstood. You will be mocked by the very people who settled for the safety you are refusing. That's the price. But it is also the test. You see, belief is not static. It is either decaying or expanding. Every day, with every choice you make, every time you avoid the difficult conversation, skip the workout, stay silent when you should speak, you are teaching yourself who you are. You are voting not with ballots, but with behavior. And your behavior becomes the evidence your mind uses to construct your identity. So if you say you want to lead, but you hide every time challenge appears, your mind begins to believe the lie you've told with your actions. And soon that lie becomes your truth. But if, instead, you show up, raw, imperfect, afraid, but present, you begin to teach your mind a new story. One where you don't have to be flawless to be powerful. One where progress matters more than polish. One where fear is not the enemy, it is the compass. This is what they never taught you in school. Your beliefs are not reflections of truth. They are reflections of repetition. The more you say something to yourself, the deeper it burrows into your identity. And so, the most powerful thing you can do today is become dangerously aware of what you are rehearsing in your mind. Because most people are rehearsing defeat and then calling it reality. They say things like, "I'm just not that confident," as though it were a genetic code, rather than a muscle they never trained. They say, "I've always been this way," as though the past were a prison sentence instead of a teacher. They say, "It's too late for me," because they've been hypnotized by a society that worships youth and ignores the power of wisdom gained through struggle. But you are not here to repeat what has already been done. You are here to expand the edges of what is possible. You are here to remember that every world-changing movement began with a single individual who believed more in their vision than in their fear. And belief, real, unshakable belief, does not wait for evidence. It creates it. That's the truth no one tells you. The world responds not to who you wish you were, but to who you decide to become. And decision is not born from perfection. It's born from the ruthless clarity that your life is your responsibility. So you must choose. Every day, every hour, every minute. Who are you choosing to be? Because belief is not a passive state. It is warfare. And your enemy is not failure. Your enemy is the quiet, smiling voice that says, "It's okay to shrink, Just this once. Chapter 3. Clarity is the blade that cuts through illusion. You will never transcend a life you are unwilling to examine. You will never conquer the mountain if you are still trying to convince yourself it isn't there. And you will never escape the prison if you've painted the bars gold and called it a home. This is the uncomfortable truth no one wants to sit with. Most people are not confused, they are avoiding clarity because clarity comes with a price. Once you see something for what it truly is, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer negotiate with mediocrity. You can no longer distract yourself with excuses that used to feel valid. And that is terrifying, because clarity demands action. There is a moment in every life, whether in the quiet space of a sleepless night or in the aftermath of another plan that didn't work, when the fog begins to lift, not all at once, not like some divine thunderclap, but slowly, like sunlight creeping across a battlefield. You begin to see where you've lied to yourself, where you've settled, where you've made yourself small for the sake of safety, where you've poured your energy into things that never returned anything but noise. And the moment you admit that truth to yourself, the moment you say, "This is not who I am meant to be," is the moment clarity sharpens the edge of your soul. But let's make something clear. Clarity is not comfort. Clarity doesn't pat you on the back and tell you everything will be okay while you remain in a pattern of quiet destruction. Clarity tears the veil away from everything you've used to stay hidden. It does not show you the path that is easiest. It shows you the path that is real. And most people are not ready for that, because the path that is real is often the one that requires you to undo years of identity, to let go of people who no longer speak the language of your future, to walk away from roles that earned you applause but cost you your soul. Clarity is the blade. It cuts through illusion, through comfort, through denial, through the stories you inherited from parents, teachers, lovers, systems, and screens. It cuts through everything you were told to believe, and forces you to ask the question that haunts the few who dare to live awake. What if everything I've accepted as true isn't? What if the career you built was never yours to begin with? What if the goals you set were a reflection of someone else's approval? What if the version of success you're chasing is nothing more than a polished cage? That's what clarity does. It strips everything down to essence. No more decoration. No more performance. No more pretending to be fulfilled when deep down, you are starving. Clarity does not come from thinking harder. It comes from subtracting the noise, from getting silent enough, still enough, raw enough, to finally hear the voice underneath the voices. And that voice, the real one, is not gentle. It is ancient. It is demanding. It says things like, "You were made for more than this," and "This comfort is costing you your future," and "You already know what to do, you're just afraid of who you'll have to become to do it." The truth is, you're not waiting for a sign. You're not waiting for permission. You're not waiting for life to become easier or for someone to choose you. You're waiting for the courage to face the truth that's already screaming inside of you. And that truth is this: the life you are living now is a reflection of what you've tolerated, not what you've deserved. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you settle for. You get what you're willing to fight for. And clarity is the moment you stop negotiating with limitation. Think of the legends. Da Vinci didn't create masterpieces because someone gave him a roadmap. He carved his vision from the marble of confusion. He didn't wait for clarity, he wrestled it into form. Mandela didn't wait for freedom to arrive fully wrapped in convenience. He found clarity inside the cell, inside the silence, inside the absence of external choice. He learned that the clearest voice comes not from luxury, but from necessity. And Disney, mocked and broke, rejected over and over by those who lacked imagination. He didn't abandon his dreams because the world couldn't see them yet. He pressed forward because his vision was clearer than their doubt. You see, clarity doesn't mean the road is mapped out in front of you. It means you stop lying about what direction your soul is pulling you toward. It means you stop pretending that the job that pays well but drains your spirit is just temporary. It means you stop calling toxic relationships complicated when the truth is they are destroying the part of you that still believes in your own light. It means you get honest, brutally, unapologetically honest, about what in your life is real and what is theater. And this level of clarity, the kind that sets revolutions in motion, the kind that demands a complete reorientation of your identity, does not come to the passive. It comes to the courageous. It comes to the one who is willing to sit in the burning heat of discomfort until everything that is false begins to melt away. You cannot hold on to illusion and clarity at the same time. You must choose. And most choose illusion, because illusion is easier to explain to others. But clarity speaks a language most don't understand. Because once you are clear, you become dangerous. Not violent, not reckless, but dangerous to every lie that has held you down. Dangerous to the version of yourself that accepted less. Dangerous to the mediocrity that calls itself normal. Dangerous to the voices that say, "Who do you think you are?" and expect you to cower. Clarity makes you immune to noise. It hardens your spine. It calibrates your vision to the level of legacy, not just survival. And once you reach that state, once you begin to walk with purpose that does not flinch, you become impossible to manipulate. You no longer chase validation. You no longer confuse movement with progress. You no longer mistake comfort for alignment. Because now you see. You see the games. You see the distractions. You see the difference between effort and effectiveness. You see that a busy schedule is not the same as a meaningful life. You no longer measure your worth by likes, by titles, by the size of your following or the praise of strangers. You begin to measure your worth by how deeply you are living in truth. And that depth is not visible to most. It cannot be posted. It cannot be bought. It must be earned in the solitude of discipline, in the silence of reflection, in the resistance of breaking and the resolve to rise. This is what clarity brings. Not ease, but power. Real, grounded, soul-born power. The kind of power that reshapes cities, heals bloodlines, awakens generations. The kind of power that demands you become the architect of your life rather than the tenant of someone else's design. And once you taste it, once you feel the fire of knowing exactly who you are, what you value, what you will no longer tolerate, you will never again live as a slave to confusion. You will walk forward. Not because it's easy, but because anything less would feel like death. Chapter 4. Vision is the architecture of the future. There comes a moment, if you've gone deep enough, past the noise, past the fear, past the addiction to appearances, when you realize that the difference between existing and creating is vision. And vision is not daydreaming. It is not escapism. It is not a Pinterest board of shallow ambitions designed to impress the people you haven't even met. Vision is not about aesthetics. Vision is architecture. It is internal blueprinting. It is the spiritual engineering of the world you refuse to die without building. And the tragedy of modern existence is not that people lack potential. It's that they are drowning in distractions while their true vision sits locked away behind layers of compromise and self-doubt. Vision is not fantasy. It is structure for the unseen. It is the prelude to creation. The seed planted in silence before the harvest is ever imagined. Every empire, every innovation, every movement that shook the world to its core began with a person who could see something that did not yet exist and believed in it so completely that they were willing to be misunderstood, mocked, and even hated for the crime of refusing to conform. And that is what true visionaries have always endured, not applause, but resistance. Not validation, but isolation. Because when you begin to see what others cannot, your very existence becomes uncomfortable for those still attached to the familiar. Think of the stories we now idolize. Walt Disney, broke and rejected, pitching a world that no one else believed could matter. A mouse. A kingdom. A dream. It sounded childish to the serious men with their serious money, but to him it was inevitable. Because he didn't need proof. He had vision. And vision is what separates the ones who build futures from the ones who maintain the past. It is what makes a Martin Luther King Jr. stand on the steps of history and declare, "I have a dream," when everything around him screamed that the dream was impossible. Vision isn't what you have when things are easy. It's what survives when everything else collapses. Most people live blind not because their eyes are closed, but because their mind is ruled by immediacy. They see only what is in front of them. The next bill, the next weekend, the next promotion, trapped in an endless cycle of short-term thinking that kills the very soul of innovation. And yet, The final stage of consciousness does not operate on such low frequencies. It lifts your eyes from survival to strategy. It dares you to stop living a life that is simply reactionary and to instead begin crafting one that is intentional, dimensional, and designed from a place of alignment rather than approval. You were not born to mimic. You were not born to inherit someone else's idea of purpose. You were born to architect something sacred out of the chaos of your own becoming. And vision is how that begins, not with a business plan or a 5-step process, but with stillness, with space, with enough silence in your internal world to hear what has always been trying to rise through you. Because the deepest visions are not chosen. They are remembered. They come to you like echoes from the future, like blueprints buried inside the marrow of your bones. You don't invent them. You awaken them. And once you awaken it, once you say yes to the call to build something real, whether it's a company, a family, a revolution, or a new version of yourself, you will discover that the path is not crowded, because few people are willing to walk through the storm of uncertainty long enough to bring vision into form. It will test you. It will strip you. It will stretch you into dimensions of self that school never taught and society never celebrated. You will have to become someone who holds the picture of the future so clearly in your mind that no amount of failure, rejection, or delay can convince you to let it go. And here is the secret they never tell you. Vision is not always convenient. It doesn't arrive when you feel ready. It rarely aligns with comfort. Sometimes, it will come to you in the lowest moment of your life, not as a rescue, but as a demand. It will whisper, now that everything else has fallen, build what matters. And if you're willing, that vision will begin to pull you, not gently but relentlessly, toward the version of yourself that is capable of creating it. Because vision is not just a picture of the future. It is a mirror. It shows you who you must become in order to bring it into existence. You cannot cheat this process. You cannot visualize your way into a life you refuse to embody. That's where most people fall short. They mistake imagination for transformation. But vision without discipline is delusion. You must train for what you see. You must align every thought, every behavior, every environment, every relationship to serve what you are building. Because once the vision is born in you, you are either growing toward it or you are betraying it. And betrayal of vision is the most painful failure of all. Not because of what you lose externally, but because of what dies inside of you when you know you turned your back on the calling. It haunts. It lingers. It corrodes the edges of your peace. Because deep down you knew. You knew what you were capable of. You knew what was possible. You knew you had a chance to build something eternal, and you let fear vote against your own future. But that doesn't have to be your story. Vision, like fire, can be rekindled. It can be reborn, reimagined, reignited. And it begins the moment you stop measuring your life by what has happened and start measuring it by what is yet to be created. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not defined by delay. You are standing on the edge of the future, and the only thing that separates you from the life you are capable of is the depth of your commitment to what you see. So ask yourself, really ask, what do you see when all the layers fall away? When the opinions fade? When the noise dies down? What do you feel pulling you forward when you are quiet enough to listen? That thing, that clear, terrifying, electric glimpse of what could be, is your map. But maps are useless without movement. Vision is the beginning. Action is the continuation. And only through both does the future take shape. Now step into it. Chapter 5. Purpose is the flame that does not flicker. There comes a point in every thinking life where the question stops being, what do I want? And starts becoming something far more dangerous, far more honest, and far more demanding. Why am I here? And that is the question that most people learn to avoid with great efficiency, because it requires them to look directly into the burning center of their existence and admit that much of what they've been doing, building, chasing, performing, was never rooted in purpose, only in survival. And survival is not living. Survival is just the avoidance of death dressed up to look like progress. But purpose, real, soul-wired purpose, does not entertain survival. It demands transformation. Purpose is not found in titles or paychecks or praise. It is not granted by followers or inherited through bloodlines, or unlocked through motivational seminars. Purpose is discovered the moment you stop trying to impress the world and start asking what the world is starving for that only your specific, unrepeatable life can deliver. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing the one thing that sets your blood on fire and refuses to let you sleep. That's the difference between the people who burn out and the people who burn through. Those with purpose don't just endure the hardship, they are fueled by it, because their suffering is not in vain, it is in service of something sacred. Purpose is not a feeling. It's a burden you are willing to carry even when the passion is gone, even when the support disappears, even when no one is watching. It's the reason you show up on the days that crush lesser men. It's the internal compass that keeps you moving when logic fails, when fear screams, when the outcome is uncertain. And purpose doesn't always look like destiny. Sometimes it looks like showing up for your children when your own childhood was chaos. Sometimes it looks like building a business that never makes headlines, but changes the trajectory of a community. Sometimes it looks like standing alone, refusing to repeat the damage passed down through generations. Purpose is rarely glamorous, but it is always revolutionary. Look at the ones who built legacies. Not just careers, not just bank accounts, but seismic shifts in the human story. They didn't do it because it was convenient. They did it because they had no other choice. Carnegie came from nothing, less than nothing, and still rose not because he wanted power, but because he knew that industrialization was the gateway to changing lives. His factories were not just machines of profit, they were extensions of purpose. Tesla, ridiculed and alone, died in poverty, but he died with the fire of purpose still burning behind his eyes. Because when you live for something bigger than yourself, you are never truly empty. You are never truly lost. You are tethered to something eternal. And here's the truth that tears down the myth of motivation. Purpose will take you further than passion ever could. Passion is a wave. Purpose is an ocean. Passion will thrill you for a season. Purpose will sustain you through decades of doubt. Purpose will make you dangerous to every excuse, every distraction, every lie you've ever believed about what's possible. And it is not given to the lucky, it is claimed by the willing. The ones willing to go where most refuse. The ones willing to suffer without recognition. The ones willing to rebuild themselves from dust, over and over again, for the sake of a mission that cannot be outsourced. But if you've spent your life playing the part others cast for you, purpose will feel like a foreign language at first. That's the cost of living by default. You become fluent in the voices of everyone else and deaf to your own. But the voice is still there. You just have to strip away the layers of identity that were constructed to please people who don't even understand your assignment. You have to stop chasing relevance and start chasing resonance. You have to stop living for approval and start living for alignment. And alignment is where purpose lives, not in what looks good, but in what feels true at the deepest level of your soul. The great lie of modern life is that purpose can be found through external achievement. But true purpose is forged in the fires of adversity. It is not found when everything is going right. It is found when everything is falling apart, and you realize that the only thing you can cling to is why you started. Purpose is the seed that does not die in the drought. It is the anchor that holds when every other part of you is unraveling. And without it, you will drift. You will numb yourself with comfort. You will confuse movement for meaning. You will achieve things that impress others but leave you hollow when you're alone in the dark. And the world needs you to stop pretending that this hollow version of life is enough. Because if you can feel even an ounce of that ache in your chest, the one that tells you that there is more, that you are capable of more, that you were meant to give more, then you are already halfway there. That ache is not weakness. That ache is the signal. It is your soul refusing to be silenced. It is your future self calling back through time and saying, you are not done yet. And if you dare to answer that call, if you dare to trade your comfort for a cause, your safety for significance, your routine for real meaning, then purpose will meet you halfway. Opportunities will begin to open that you could never have seen while you were asleep. People will show up not because you forced them, but because purpose attracts those who are aligned with your mission. Your energy will shift from exhaustion to focus. Your decisions will become cleaner, sharper, no longer about what's easy, but about what's right. And you will begin to walk with a kind of authority that can't be faked, a kind of clarity that makes other people rethink their own direction. But this is not for the faint of heart. Purpose will stretch you. It will demand that you rise before you are ready. It will break parts of you that are built on ego and replace them with parts built on fire. You will not be applauded at first. You may not be understood, but you will be free. And freedom, true soul-level freedom, only comes when you are living in direct contact with your reason for breathing. So stop asking for ease. Stop asking for signs. Start asking what must be done with the time you have left. Because you are not promised another day, and your calling is not patient. The world is on fire, and you are still worried about being liked. That ends here. You are here to lead. You are here to serve. You are here to move the needle of human potential in some small but irreversible way. But that won't happen until you choose to stop drifting and start building a life that is anchored in something that does not flicker. This is purpose, not a destination, but a direction. Not something you find once, but something you fight for every single day. And if you fight for it, if you sacrifice for it, if you train for it, if you bleed for it, it will not abandon you. It will shape you. And through you, it will shape the world. Chapter 6. Discipline is the door between who you are and who you must become. There is a lie that has been sold so cleverly, so convincingly, and with such seductive charm that millions have swallowed it whole without ever questioning its cost. And that lie is this: that motivation is what you need to change your life. But motivation is temporary fire. Discipline is the eternal engine. Motivation arrives when it's convenient, when you feel inspired, when the sun is shining and the path seems clear. But discipline, true, ruthless, unflinching discipline, shows up when you are exhausted, when the storm is loud, when no one believes in you, and especially when you no longer believe in yourself. Discipline is not glamorous. It does not care about how you feel. It only asks what must be done, and then it does it over and over again until transformation is not an accident, but an inevitability. Discipline is the currency of the awakened. It is the invisible bridge between intention and execution, between potential and power, between dreaming and becoming. It is what turns vision into legacy. It is what turns vague wishes into irreversible momentum. It is what makes a human being dangerous, not because they have more talent, more intelligence, more charm, but because they have trained themselves to keep showing up when the average person has long since quit. And in a world addicted to distraction, to instant gratification, to dopamine-soaked validation, a disciplined mind is a revolutionary act. Most people never learn this because most people never stay in the fire long enough to let it refine them. They start and stop, rise and fall, ride the emotional roller coaster of temporary effort, and then wonder why they're still living in the same cycle year after year. They blame the system. They blame the timing. They blame other people. But the truth is they lack structure. They lack commitment. They lack the internal fortress of self-leadership that keeps a person moving forward even when all the inspiration is gone. That fortress is built through repetition, not when it's easy, but especially when it's not. There's a reason the giants of history were disciplined beyond comprehension. It wasn't because they had nothing better to do. It was because they understood something most never will, that discipline is the only way to earn your freedom. Andrew Carnegie did not rise from poverty to industrial titan because of luck. He built daily habits that stacked like bricks into a castle of dominance. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb because of brilliance alone. He engineered thousands of failures with surgical precision, guided by daily execution, until the darkness broke. Nelson Mandela didn't emerge from 27 years of imprisonment with rage. He emerged with vision, with poise, with self-mastery that came not from comfort but from unwavering control over his internal state, day after day, year after year. That's what discipline gives you. Control. Not control over the world. The world will never bow to your preferences, but control over the only thing you ever truly owned: your response, your standards, your effort, your endurance. And that control is what separates leaders from victims, builders from wanderers, creators from complainers. Because once you realize that no one is coming to save you, you begin the real work. The work of saving yourself, one habit, one decision, one commitment at a time. And this is where people confuse discipline with punishment. Discipline is not a cage. It's not the death of freedom. It is the structure that creates freedom. It's what allows you to say no to what is beneath you and yes to what you were born for. Without discipline, your potential will rot. Without discipline, your ideas will die in journals, your goals will remain fantasies, and your life will become a museum of what could have been. Because the greatest tragedy is not failure, the greatest tragedy is wasted strength. The kind of strength that was never activated because the person carrying it was never willing to put in the work required to awaken it. You see, discipline is not about the grand moments. It's about the boring ones. The silent hours. The repetitions that no one claps for. The mornings where you get up without applause, without motivation, without guarantees, simply because you said you would. Discipline is keeping a promise to yourself when breaking it would be easier. It is saying yes to growth and no to weakness, over and over again, until your nervous system forgets what it was like to live a life ruled by impulse. And the deeper truth is this: discipline isn't just about action, it is about identity. Every time you keep your word to yourself, you are casting a vote for the kind of person you are. You are proving to your mind that you can be trusted. And trust, self-trust, is the most powerful psychological weapon in the arsenal of the human spirit. Because when you trust yourself, you don't need guarantees. You don't need hand-holding. You don't need the perfect plan or the right timing. You just move. You build. You endure. You become. There will always be a reason to stop. There will always be resistance. But the disciplined do not make decisions based on emotion. They operate from standards. And those standards, once cemented in fire, become the rhythm of their life, consistent, untouchable, immune to mood swings or outside noise. That's what makes them unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because they get stronger. This is the truth the modern world desperately wants you to ignore. The world tells you to chase your bliss, to follow what feels good, to avoid burnout by avoiding discomfort. But the ones who change history did not avoid discomfort. They mastered it. They leaned into it. They trained inside of it. They bled inside of it. And eventually, they emerged with something unbreakable, a character forged in fire. Because they understood that temporary pain is a small price to pay for permanent power. So ask yourself, who would you be if you were no longer controlled by your emotions? Who would you be if you did what was required, regardless of how you felt? What would your life look like if you became the kind of person who kept showing up, not just when it was easy, but when it was hard, when it was dull, when no one cared, when the reward was miles away? That person exists inside you. But they will not be revealed through comfort. They will be revealed through practice. This is the essence of discipline, the sacred, daily ritual of refusing to betray the future you are building. You don't need motivation. You need conviction. You don't need inspiration. You need execution. You don't need a different life. You need to become a different version of yourself, and that version is waiting on the other side of the habits you're avoiding. This is the door. Discipline is the key. Walk through it. Chapter 7. Action is the only language reality understands. There is a point where all the thinking, all the journaling, all the vision boarding, all the soul searching, all the talking, reading, reflecting, and planning must die, not because they are unimportant, but because they are incomplete. They are scaffolding, preparation, inner rehearsals. But the world does not respond to thoughts. The world does not kneel for ideas. The world does not care how clearly you saw the future in your mind if you never had the courage to bring it to life in your hands. The world responds to action. Not intention. Not energy. Not alignment alone. But action. Physical, tangible, visible, relentless movement in the direction of your convictions. Because until you do, you have not become. You can spend years talking about your potential and still die with it untouched. You can fill notebooks with plans and dreams and strategies, and they will mean nothing if your feet never move. You can convince others that you're working on it, that you're preparing, that you're getting closer, but reality does not speak the language of delay. Reality speaks only one language: results. It sees what you've built, not what you thought about building. It rewards what you committed to, not what you considered. And the cold truth is that most people will never cross the threshold between knowing what to do and doing it, because that threshold is guarded by fear, doubt, resistance, perfectionism, and every old wound that whispers, "What if it doesn't work?" But the question that separates the few who rise from the many who remain stuck is not, "What if it doesn't work?" It's, "What if I do nothing? What if I die with all this potential locked inside of me? What if I never let the world see what I was really capable of? What if I waste the one life I've been given playing it safe because I was too afraid to look stupid, too afraid to fail, too afraid to risk being judged by people who are too afraid to live?" This is not philosophy. This is not abstract. This is the fundamental dividing line between those who live lives that echo through time and those who leave no trace. At some point you must act. Not perfectly. Not when everything is figured out. Not when you feel fully ready. But now. Today. With what you have, where you are as you are. Because there is no perfect moment. There is no flawless plan. There is no guarantee. There is only action, and action is the ultimate proof of belief. You don't believe in something because you say you do. You believe in it when you're willing to suffer for it, build for it, show up for it when it's inconvenient, messy, unglamorous, and unnoticed. The problem with most people is not lack of information. It's the disease of hesitation. And hesitation is the graveyard of dreams. Every time you hesitate, you teach your nervous system that uncertainty means pause, that discomfort means delay, that resistance means retreat. But greatness is not born in that space. Greatness is born in motion. Violent, deliberate, focused motion. Think about the giants. Elon Musk doesn't wait for market confidence before building. He builds what should not work, again and again until it does. Steve Jobs didn't poll the world before reshaping it. He acted from belief, from intuition, from a compulsion so deep it bypassed logic. Rosa Parks didn't start a movement because she felt ready. She made a decision in the moment, in the fire, in the pressure, and that one act of refusal shook a nation. Action is how the system is disrupted. Action is how ideas become movements. Action is how you separate yourself from the sea of talkers and enter the realm of doers. But don't confuse action with activity. We live in an age where people stay busy while accomplishing nothing. They fill their days with low-leverage tasks, scrolling, overthinking, obsessing over details that don't matter, and then call it effort. Real action is directional. It is connected to a larger purpose. It costs you something. It demands energy, sacrifice, vulnerability, exposure, and risk. It forces you into the arena where your flaws are visible and your doubts have nowhere to hide. But that arena, the place of friction and failure and growth, is the only place where transformation lives. Every act of action is a vote. A vote for your future self. A vote for the life you are constructing. A vote for the identity you are claiming. And every time you avoid action, you are also voting. Not out loud, not with words, but silently in your nervous system, for stagnation, for safety, for entropy. You are reinforcing the belief that it is okay to shrink. And over time, that belief calcifies. It becomes a personality. And that personality becomes a prison. But there is another path. It is not paved. It is not safe. But it is alive. And it begins with one step. Not a leap. Not a miracle. Just a step, followed by another and another, until momentum builds like a storm behind you. Action, once repeated, becomes rhythm. Rhythm becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. And identity becomes destiny. This is not about hustle. This is about honor. Honor for the gift of time. Honor for the breath in your lungs. Honor for the one shot you have at living without regret. Because regret is the cost of inaction. And it does not arrive immediately, it arrives quietly years from now, in moments of stillness, when you realize that you could have done more. You should have spoken. You should have built. You should have started. But if you're still breathing, then you still have time. And what you do with that time is the only thing that matters. Action is how you repent for wasted years. Action is how you redeem past mistakes. Action is how you prove to yourself that your story is still being written, and you are not done yet. So stop waiting. Stop asking. Stop preparing forever. Pull the trigger. Launch the project. Make the call. Take the class. Leave the job. Start the business. Write the book. End the relationship that's killing your spirit. The final stage of consciousness is not passive enlightenment. It is not a meditative high where you escape the world. It is embodiment, bringing your truth into the world through relentless, aligned, disciplined action. Because that is the only language reality understands. And the moment you speak it, everything begins to change. Chapter 8. Gratitude is not passivity, it is power under control. In a culture that worships speed, noise, ambition, disruption, and endless achievement, the word gratitude has been domesticated, diluted, and softened into something safe, a pleasant idea to sprinkle over moments like a garnish rather than the force of nature it was always meant to be. But real gratitude is not soft. It is not a smile on a coffee cup or a quote on a calendar. Real gratitude is ferocious. It is grounded. It is a form of clarity so sharp that it cuts through the illusion of scarcity, through the need for external validation, and through the chronic dissatisfaction that poisons so many people's lives. Gratitude is not about being passive. It is not about pretending everything is okay. Gratitude is about perspective, the kind of perspective that allows you to stand in the storm, feel the rain soaking your skin, and still say, I am alive. And because I am alive, I still hold power. Most people are not ungrateful because they're selfish. Most are ungrateful because they're blind to what they've already overcome, blind to what they've already built, blind to the opportunities hiding in the struggle, and blind to the fact that this very moment, no matter how difficult, is still a gift because they have the ability to act within it. Gratitude is not denial. It's not the suppression of pain or the fake performance of positivity. It is the art of seeing accurately. And when you see accurately, you realize that even your pain has been a teacher, that your failures were architects of your evolution, and that every scar on your body or your heart has brought you one step closer to your highest self. Gratitude, real gratitude, is power under control. It's the ability to hold strength without needing to display it. It's the quiet acknowledgement that you are no longer at the mercy of what happens to you, because you are choosing to frame your life through the lens of agency. And that framing is everything. Because the way you interpret your experience becomes the blueprint for how you show up in the world. If you see only what's missing, what's broken, what's unfair, you will shrink. You will operate from lack. You will unconsciously sabotage every opportunity, every relationship, every risk that demands you trust in something greater than your fear. But if you discipline your mind to see what is still possible, what has not been lost, what can still be built, then you rise. You move. You speak. You build. And that motion becomes momentum. Gratitude, then, is not just a virtue. It is a strategy. It is how you anchor yourself in the now without becoming addicted to comfort or haunted by the past. It allows you to take inventory not just of what you have, but of what you are becoming, and that is the critical distinction. Because you are not the same as you were a year ago or even a month ago, and part of waking up, truly waking up, is realizing that you are allowed to appreciate the version of you that kept going, even if they were imperfect, even if they were afraid, even if they didn't get it all right. Gratitude for yourself is not arrogance. It is honor. It is the decision to stop seeing yourself as a project to fix and start seeing yourself as a process to respect. And here's what the world won't tell you: gratitude is armor. It protects your mind from corrosion. It guards your focus from entropy. It keeps your spirit from being hijacked by comparison, envy, or self-pity. Because when you are grateful, truly grateful, your inner world becomes harder to infiltrate. The noise doesn't reach you the same way. The opinions don't carry the same weight. You are no longer measuring your life against the filtered performances of others because you know, deeply and clearly, what your life actually means to you. Gratitude clears the fog. And when the fog is gone, you move faster. You move smarter. You move with intention. You stop chasing ghosts and start building reality. But just like discipline, gratitude is not something you feel. It is something you practice. It must be trained. It must be chosen when it is most difficult. Because when everything is going right, gratitude is easy. But when the pressure is real, when the progress feels invisible, when the fight has gone on longer than you expected, That's when gratitude becomes a decision of power. That's when it becomes a weapon against despair. That's when it tells the world, you may slow me down, but you will not break me, because I refuse to forget what I've already come through. You want to build a mind that can hold power? Start here. Start by learning how to see clearly what you've already conquered, what you've survived, what you've earned through fire, through pain, through nights of doubt that no one else will ever know about. You start by reminding yourself that no matter how much further you have to go, you've already come far enough to demand your own respect. Gratitude is not a moment. It is a mindset. And that mindset, that fierce, focused, grounded awareness, will carry you when motivation dies, when the plan changes, when the people around you can no longer walk with you. And it will sharpen your hunger, not dull it. Because the mistake many make is believing that gratitude means complacency, that being grateful means you stop striving. True gratitude fuels ambition. It does not kill desire, it purifies it. It strips away the need to prove and replaces it with the need to express. You no longer build because you're trying to become enough. You build because you know you are, and creation becomes an act of gratitude in motion. Your work becomes an offering. Your goals become altars. Your discipline becomes worship. And when you live like that, not from obligation, but from reverence, you no longer burn out. Because you are no longer running away from something, you are moving toward something sacred. And that forward motion, powered by clarity, anchored by gratitude, and aligned with purpose, becomes unstoppable. So when you wake up tomorrow, or even right now, don't ask yourself what you lack. Ask yourself what you've been given the chance to do. Don't waste another second complaining about what you don't control. Step into the arena of what you can. And if you find even the smallest reason to give thanks, for breath, for strength, for the fight still left in your chest, let that be the fire that ignites everything else. Because gratitude, real gratitude, is not a whisper of thanks, it is a roar of readiness. And it means this: you are not waiting for life to be perfect. You are choosing to rise because you are already blessed with the power to build. Chapter 9. Adaptability is the highest form of intelligence. We are taught to chase certainty, to build predictable routines, to make solid plans, to pursue stability as if it were the pinnacle of wisdom. But what no one tells you is that the world you are preparing for today will not exist tomorrow. And in this brutal but liberating truth lies a fundamental principle of higher consciousness. The strongest minds are not the ones who cling to plans, they are the ones who evolve in real time, the ones who respond, pivot, reframe, reimagine, and reassert their direction, not because they are fickle or chaotic, but because they have chosen to live in reality, not in nostalgia for the script they once wrote in their head. Adaptability is not weakness. Adaptability is the ultimate power, the kind of intelligence that transcends theory, breaks away from rigidity, and thrives inside the chaos that paralyzes those who were trained only to follow rules. The illusion of permanence is one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into. People build entire lives, careers, relationships, identities on the assumption that what works now will continue working tomorrow, but the terrain is always shifting, and what you refuse to adjust to will eventually bury you. The greatest empires, both personal and global, have crumbled not because of external threats, but because they refused to evolve when change demanded it. And this applies not only to history, but to your life. The person you were 10 years ago had dreams, convictions, beliefs, but many of those were built on incomplete knowledge, emotional wounds, and limited perspectives. The tragedy is not that we outgrow those beliefs, but that so many people keep trying to live inside the limitations of their former self, afraid that letting go of who they were might feel like death. And in a way, it is, because evolution requires ego death, identity death, the kind of psychological shedding that makes people uncomfortable to be around you. But evolution is the price of truth. You cannot hold on to your old story and walk into your new future at the same time. One has to die. And the ability to let it die, to let what no longer fits fall away, is adaptability at its core. It's not just reacting. It's recreation. It's looking directly at the data of your life and asking, what is this teaching me? Rather than, why is this happening to me? That shift alone is the birth of sovereignty. Because now, you're no longer a victim of circumstance, you are a strategist inside it. You don't resist reality, you work with it, and through that collaboration, you reclaim your ability to win even when everything goes wrong. That's what made the greats untouchable. They didn't just build, they adjusted. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb because his first theory worked. He failed thousands of times, not because he was dumb, but because he was adaptive. He didn't change the goal, he changed the method. The Wright brothers didn't start with flight. They started with gliders, with wreckage, with wind tunnels and crashes and ridicule. But they stayed fluid. They didn't fall in love with a particular outcome, they fell in love with forward motion. And that distinction is everything. Because if your identity is tied to a single path, then the moment that path fails, you fail. But if your identity is tied to progress, to evolution, to the principle of becoming, then every failure becomes data, every detour becomes design. You must stop mistaking consistency for integrity. Yes, integrity matters. But integrity means loyalty to truth, not to outdated versions of yourself. You are not betraying your past by growing beyond it. You are not being inconsistent when you choose to become more informed. What is inconsistent is claiming to want growth while refusing to change. What is betrayal is staying small out of fear of looking disloyal to a version of you that no longer reflects your current clarity. And the world will resist this. People around you will try to pin you down, to your past, to their expectations, to the version of you that made them comfortable. But that is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to become the most accurate version of yourself, not the most familiar. Adaptability is the tool that gives you permission to reinvent, not once, but endlessly. It is what allows you to respond to crisis with creativity, to disruption with innovation, to heartbreak with rebirth. The more adaptable you are, the harder you are to break, because your strength is not in rigid structure, but in flexible design. Like bamboo, you bend in the storm, but you do not snap. You adapt, not because you are weak, but because you understand that permanence is an illusion and control is a myth. And when you finally embrace that truth, the world stops being a threat and starts becoming a playground. Let me make it clear, this does not mean you abandon your values, or that you drift without direction. Quite the opposite. It means you root your values deep, but let your methods remain dynamic. It means you stay committed to your mission, but flexible in your approach. Because missions don't fail, tactics do. And if your ego is too fragile to admit that a tactic no longer works, you'll keep digging holes where bridges should be built. This is the death of too many dreams, not lack of effort, but lack of adjustment. Adaptability also means resilience in your internal world. It means you don't cling to outcomes as the source of your identity. It means you don't fall apart when the goal takes longer, or the plan breaks, or the people leave. It means you've trained yourself to find your balance in motion, not because everything is calm, but because you have become the calm. You've trained your nervous system to expect the unexpected, not as a problem, but as the path. Because the truth is, the road was never meant to be straight. You are not being punished when things change. You are being sculpted, refined, calibrated to levels of depth and sharpness that only chaos can create. So stop resisting. Stop mourning the version of the plan that didn't work. Start asking better questions. Start pivoting faster. Start building from the data of failure instead of decorating the ruins of a dead idea. Adaptability doesn't mean you don't feel the loss. It means you don't get lost in it. You grieve. You breathe. You adjust. And you rise, sharper, smarter, clearer. Because in the final stage of consciousness, adaptability is not just intelligence. It is survival. It is power. It is peace. It is how you become the kind of person who is not defined by what happens, but by how you respond. And that, in the end, is the only thing the world cannot take from you. Chapter 10. Resilience is not endurance, it's rebirth in motion. There is a common misunderstanding in the modern conversation around strength. The idea that resilience simply means holding on, surviving, enduring, grinding it out until the pain stops and the sun comes back. But that is a child's definition. It is not wrong, but it is incomplete. True resilience is not the art of survival. It is the capacity to recreate yourself while the fire still burns. It is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but learning how to build shelter, construct new plans, reshape your thinking, and find meaning inside the storm while the wind is still howling and the walls are still shaking. Resilience is not static. It is not about remaining who you were. It is about becoming who you must be in order to rise through what you did not choose. Life is not concerned with how much you can take. It is concerned with how much you can become under pressure. Every person who ever transformed something, every soul who ever moved the needle of human history, was tested not by easy wins or favorable conditions, but by chaos. And the question is never, will the chaos come? It is already here. The real question is, who are you becoming because of it? Most people fold not because life broke them, but because they spent too much time resisting the truth that life does not care about their plans. They thought success would arrive in a straight line. They thought progress would be polite. They thought transformation would wait for them to be ready. But resilience is what you build when life doesn't wait, when the hits don't stop, when the people leave, when the money dries up, when the doors slam shut and you have no one left to impress. Only the mirror and the voice inside your chest. The strength you are looking for will not be handed to you. It will not come from a quote, a video, or a temporary surge of adrenaline. It will come from the decision, and it is always a decision, to rise anyway. To move forward while carrying the weight of grief, of uncertainty, of fatigue, of rejection, of every invisible burden you never thought you could hold. And still build. Still choose to show up in a world that gave you every reason to shut down. That is resilience, not perfection, not stoicism, not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to let that emotion write your ending. And it is earned. It is never inherited. It is forged in silence, in darkness, in solitude, in those long hours when your hands are trembling and your back is breaking and no one is coming to tell you it's going to be okay. Resilience grows when you stop waiting for the pain to go away and start learning how to alchemize it, to turn failure into fuel, betrayal into boundary, loss into wisdom, and fear into focus. Because once you understand that pain is not your enemy but your teacher, you stop running from it and begin listening to it. You study it. You take notes. You let it sharpen your instincts, refine your standards, and carve new dimensions of depth into your character that comfort could never provide. This is what separates leaders from followers, warriors from wanderers, builders from dreamers. Not talent, not luck, not even vision, but the ability to endure collapse and still construct. To lose something important and still continue. To hear the voice that says, you should give up, and respond not with a motivational phrase but with action. Because the most powerful answer to adversity is execution, not explanation, not complaining, not waiting for conditions to become favorable again, but executing from the ashes, creating from the wreckage, continuing forward without a script, without a map, without applause, simply because you must. Resilience is not reactive, it is creative. It is the art of seeing possibility in places most people have already given up on. It is what turns prisoners into presidents, orphans into emperors, rejects into icons. It is not just about mental toughness. It is about spiritual elasticity, the ability to break and reform again and again without losing the core of your mission. And most importantly, it's about letting go of the need for things to go back to normal. Because the truth is, the moment you are called to evolve, the version of you that seeks normal is already outdated. There is no going back. There is only forward, into the unknown, into the fire, into the work of rebuilding a future that does not yet exist. And those who carry resilience as a way of being do not ask for guarantees. They do not need perfect timing. They do not need validation. They carry something far more powerful, resolve. And resolve is immune to trends, to setbacks, to the noise of doubters, to the weakness of convenience. Resolve does not flinch. Resolve recalibrates. It is grounded not in the illusion of ease, but in the knowledge that everything worth building will cost you, and that the cost is worth it. So ask yourself, right now, in this season of your life, are you waiting for someone to tell you it's safe to try again? Are you delaying your next move until you're fully confident the pain won't repeat itself? Are you holding yourself hostage to fear disguised as realism? Or are you willing, truly willing, to start from wherever you are with whatever strength remains and begin again not as a beginner, but as someone who has survived? Because that survival is your credibility. It is not your shame. It is your evidence. Evidence that you are still breathing, that you are still capable, that the fight is still in you. And if the fight is still in you, then so is the future you were born to shape. Resilience is how that future is built, not all at once, not without scars, not without the quiet moments of doubt, but step by step, in alignment with your convictions, guided by a commitment that says, I will not vanish in the face of pressure. I will not collapse at the edge of the unknown. I will not let fear dictate the story of my life. Resilience is not about bouncing back. It's about rising different, stronger, clearer, wiser, more dangerous, more loving, more aware. And every time you do, you rewrite what is possible for everyone who sees you, because resilience is not just personal, it is contagious. It gives permission. It opens doors. It breathes courage into others simply by existing. So rise. And if you fall again, rise better. Rise sharper. Rise louder. Rise quieter, if you must, but always rise. Because the final stage of consciousness is not about living a life free from suffering. It's about becoming someone who refuses to be broken by it. Chapter 11. Learning is not about information. It is the act of shedding the illusion of knowing. The modern world confuses learning with the accumulation of facts, the hoarding of data, the passive consumption of knowledge packaged into digestible formats, podcasts, summaries, tutorials, degree programs, step-by-step content designed to feed your ego the illusion that simply knowing about something is the same as becoming it. But real learning, true, deep, irrevocable learning, is violent in the most transformative way. It shatters frameworks. It tears apart assumptions. It demands you let go of what you thought was true and rebuild your mental scaffolding from a place of humility, not authority. Because until you are willing to admit how wrong you've been, how much of what you call truth is inherited noise, how much of what you defend is just a mirror of what's kept you comfortable, you are not learning, you are memorizing. The mind does not evolve by accumulation. It evolves by destruction and reconstruction. It evolves every time you say, I was wrong, I don't know, I need to listen more closely, I have to unlearn this before I can rebuild. That's why so few people ever truly learn. Because unlearning feels like death to the ego. It feels like surrender. It feels like weakness. But in truth, it is strength beyond measure. It is the sign of a warrior mind, someone so committed to truth that they are willing to dismantle every false certainty they've ever used as armor and start again from zero. Every great thinker, every revolutionary, every person who ever cracked open a new realm of possibility did so not because they were certain, but because they were willing to challenge what others considered absolute. Socrates didn't claim wisdom. He claimed awareness of ignorance. Einstein didn't discover because he was attached to known formulas. He discovered because he had the courage to think beyond them. Malcolm X transformed his life not through stubborn dogma, but through the relentless willingness to revise his worldview, even when it cost him alliances, power, and safety. Learning is what bridges you from identity to integrity, because you cannot walk in truth if your ideas are still enslaved to what the world told you to believe. But learning only begins when you stop performing intelligence and start living curiosity. That means asking the hard questions. Why do I believe what I believe? Who did this belief serve when I first accepted it? What fear is being protected by this story I keep repeating? What possibilities am I rejecting because I'm too loyal to my current model of the world? And most of all, am I brave enough to stand in uncertainty without rushing to conclusions just to soothe my anxiety? Because true learning is never clean. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. It's raw. It challenges the parts of you that are still trying to prove, still trying to be seen, still trying to be right. And the moment you step beyond the need to be right, you finally enter the field where truth lives. This is not about intellect. This is about presence. It's about awareness. It's about the ability to observe yourself in real time, not judge, not rationalize, not justify, but observe. Because when you learn to observe your own mind, your impulses, your stories, your reactions, your triggers, you begin to detach from them. You stop being owned by them. And in that space, learning becomes not something you do occasionally, but something you are always. You become a student of the moment. You see the lesson in every interaction. You start treating life itself as a classroom where the tuition is paid in attention. But learning also demands humility, not just intellectual humility, but spiritual humility, the kind that requires you to kneel before the unknown and accept that your past experiences, while valid, are not the limit of what's possible. You cannot lead if you cannot learn. You cannot grow if you cannot receive. You cannot influence if your mind is rigid and inflexible and addicted to the certainty of your own expertise. Because expertise is a trap. It closes your ears. It calcifies your perception. It makes you blind to nuance, to change, to anything that doesn't already confirm what you've decided is true. But real wisdom, the kind that bends timelines and shifts paradigms, is fluid. It is forever in revision. It is shaped through contradiction. And it requires the death of ego again and again and again. This is why the final stage of consciousness is not just about action or discipline or purpose. It's about evolution. And evolution only happens when you are willing to question the very structure of your thoughts. Not just what you think, but how you think. Where your thoughts originate. What bias you protect. What truths you silence. What part of your identity depends on never admitting you were wrong. And that's where learning stops being academic and starts being existential. Because to learn in this way is to dismantle the version of you that was built for survival, for approval, for performance, and begin building a version of you that is engineered for truth. Learning then becomes sacred. It becomes dangerous. It becomes a daily rebellion against stagnation, arrogance, and intellectual laziness. You stop looking for answers and start refining your questions. You stop parroting what you've heard and start synthesizing what you felt. You begin to speak with authority not because you've memorized someone else's script, but because you've tested your beliefs against the fire of life and kept only what held up under pressure. That's when you become sharp. That's when you become precise. That's when your presence begins to carry weight, because you're no longer operating from surface knowledge, but from embodied understanding. And when you reach that level, when you become a living laboratory, constantly evolving, constantly questioning, constantly sharpening your awareness, you become hard to manipulate. You become unshakable. You don't fall for cheap ideas or tribal dogmas or viral narratives because your mind has been trained to go deeper, to look beyond appearances, to ask, what is the unseen mechanism behind this message? What are the incentives, the origins, the distortions? You learn how to think not just better, but freely, and that is the rarest intelligence of all. So stop measuring your intelligence by how much you know. Measure it by how willing you are to change what you know in the face of deeper truth. Measure it by your ability to hold tension, to challenge your own assumptions, to learn from people you disagree with, to release beliefs that no longer serve the evolution of your character. Because information is abundant, but transformation requires surrender. And learning, true learning, is the surrender of certainty in exchange for a life that expands. Chapter 12. The final stage of consciousness is ownership. There is a line, invisible, irreversible, that, once crossed, changes the trajectory of a life forever, not because something external happens, not because circumstances shift, not because a miracle arrives, but because the person you were is no longer in control. And in that moment, without ceremony or applause, a deeper self takes the throne. The performer dies. The victim is buried. The echo of past identities that once ran your decisions loses its grip. And what rises from the wreckage is not a new version of you, but the real one. The one who has always been there, buried beneath layers of fear, noise, guilt, programming, inherited trauma, cultural expectation, false belief, and unconscious compliance. This is not motivation. This is the moment you claim your life. Ownership is not a concept. It is not a mindset. It is not a strategy. It is a state of being. A permanent state, a turning point in consciousness after which your inner compass is no longer outsourced. You stop waiting for direction. You stop looking for answers. You stop seeking permission. You look at the mess, the beauty, the contradiction, the incomplete chapters, the broken timelines, the delays, the betrayals, the victories, the scars, and you say, all of it belongs to me. Not with shame. Not with regret. But with power. With radical self-respect. With the certainty that you are no longer just the passenger in a vehicle built by your past, you are now the architect of everything that happens next. The final stage of consciousness is not bliss. It's not floating above the world detached from its chaos. It's not living in denial of pain or chasing some utopian illusion of peace. The final stage of consciousness is the full acceptance of responsibility, not just for your actions, but for your state, your beliefs, your frequency, your vibration, your outcomes, your direction, your impact. You stop blaming your childhood. You stop romanticizing your trauma. You stop telling stories that center your life around what happened to you instead of what you are doing with it. And this does not mean you bypass the pain. It means you integrate it. You transform it. You harvest wisdom from it so ruthlessly that it no longer defines you. It equips you. Ownership is where all your power was hiding. It is the moment you no longer wait for clarity to arrive from outside you, because you finally realize it has always been generated from within. It is not about predicting the future. It is about creating it, brick by brick, standard by standard, decision by decision, in the dark, in the cold, when no one is watching, because you've made a silent contract with yourself that this time, you will not vanish. You begin to live as the cause, not the effect. You begin to ask different questions, not, why is this happening to me? But, what am I being asked to become through this? Not, who will help me? But, who must I become so I never need rescuing again? You stop reacting and start designing. You stop complaining and start executing. You stop negotiating with your weakness and start collaborating with your higher self. You start walking into rooms with a calm so deep it silences noise before you even speak, because there's nothing left in you that is looking to be chosen. You already chose yourself. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is the deep, unshakable certainty that nothing outside of you will ever complete you, and therefore nothing outside of you can ever destroy you. You become untouchable not because you're hard, but because you're whole. And wholeness means you no longer need to prove. You are not here to perform healing, you are here to live it. You are not here to impress strangers, you are here to embody your vision. You are not here to keep everyone comfortable. You are here to awaken every dormant cell in your body and walk as the embodiment of truth. Ownership is the last door. You walk through it alone. No guide. No cheering crowd. No perfect plan. Just the weight of your own name in your chest and the willingness to carry it with reverence. You own your failures. You own your talent. You own your rage, your power, your softness, your voice. You stop asking if it's too much. You stop wondering if you're allowed. You stop hiding your genius behind humility and your pain behind performance. You arrive, fully, in every room, in every conversation, not with apology, but with presence. And the people who are meant to walk with you will feel it. You won't need to explain. You won't need to justify. You won't need to shrink or translate your energy into a version that's easier to digest. The right people will calibrate to your clarity. The wrong ones will fall away. Your world will shift. Your boundaries will harden. Your time will become sacred. Your standards will no longer fluctuate based on how lonely you feel. You'll be willing to lose approval, attention, familiarity, even people you once loved, because you are no longer negotiating the value of your path. And the price of peace is high, but once paid, you will never beg for it again. This is how legacy begins. Not with a lightning bolt. Not with applause, but with a decision. A decision to never again abandon yourself for comfort. A decision to act in alignment regardless of outcome. A decision to stop performing potential and start embodying it. You begin to realize that every delay, every detour, every heartbreak was not proof that you were unworthy. It was preparation for this level of responsibility. Because when you own yourself, you are entrusted with more. More vision. More power, more impact, and more weight. But you no longer fear the weight, you rise to meet it. You carry it with grace. You lead with integrity. And you no longer collapse under pressure, because pressure has become your fuel. And now, there is no going back. You are no longer who you were. You are not who you used to pretend to be. You are not the mask you wore to survive. You are not the story you told yourself when you were afraid to change. You are the one who owns it all. The past, the pain, the purpose, the path. This is not the end of your journey. This is the moment you finally take the wheel. You no longer search for truth. You live as it. And that is the final stage of consciousness. A truth few ever realize. But you did. Now build.